Do you have a story to share with the world? Of course you do. We all have stories to share. An Anchor podcast allows you to share your interests in a way that connects to others all across the globe. If you have been considering starting your own podcast and don't know where to begin, Anchor makes it easy to record, edit, and publish with the click of a button. You can even add music. Whether it's crime dramas, self-improvement, paranormal adventures, or tips about parenting, you too can share your unique imprint on the world. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. You've got this. I believe in you. Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. We are going to dive a little bit into how to tune into our abundance channel. And I have a special guest here with me today, Dr. Tracy Debi. And I met Tracy through another podcast, and her and I have done a couple of podcasts together, and we've had so many things that we have talked about on our podcasts as well as on the side. And Tracy has become a good friend of mine. So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you. Yeah, we have so much in common. We have such fun Instagram DMs. If anyone saw our Instagram DMs and our voice notes. But yeah, you've become a great friend to me and a cool resource to just share ideas. Like, I don't know about this idea, kind of got it as a download. Like, what do you think? And that's how this conversation really kind of, I think, was born. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I feel like it came about. And so I'm so happy that you asked me to share about it more publicly, because you and I have had our own little experimentation with it. And we were like, we have to tell people.
Absolutely. And so I think when we're looking at energy, frequency, and vibration, we can look at tuning into our abundance channel. I immediately think of like a radio station. I don't know about you, but it's like literally putting up our little antenna and tuning into that abundance channel, because everything has a frequency, and that includes abundance. So when people think of abundance, Tracy, what is it that you think of when you think of the word abundance?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Thank you for asking it, because I think that's the first step before we even talk about abundance. You have to know what it is, you know? And if you asked me 6 months ago what abundance is, and if you ask me now, they're different definitions.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So 6 months ago, I would have said abundance was having all my needs met and more.
Which is a good
pretty solid, right? Which is a pretty solid definition of abundance. Now, abundance to me is the knowledge that I create my own reality. The knowledge that I create my life the way I want it.
Yeah. And we're in control of that, right? It's like through our own
control of that. And like, I'm in control of that. Mm-hmm. So that's what abundance is for me right now. It's that I just, the way, because I have this experience of it. So it's tricky to put it into words for me, but it's like, it's our natural state. It feels very much like our natural state, our state as creators of our reality. And that's what abundance is for me now. So when I know that what's happening in my world is my creation, that's abundance to me. Let me put it more simply.
I love that. And you're correct in that. I feel the same way. It's like our divine blueprint. It's our divine template to have abundance in our life. We are abundant. It actually is kind of transcendent within each and every one of us. It's not something outside of us. It's something that we are, right? Yeah. And so, I think for me, if you would have asked me a year ago, I probably would have said money or, something along those lines. Mm-hmm. But when I look at abundance, it's just, it's so versatile, and it can really be anything that you put your energy on or your focus on that you attract and bring into your life. And there isn't even a limit to that. Some people will say the sky's the limit. And I say, there is no limit. There is no limit to what you want to attract into your life. So, Tracy, we were on your show about 3 weeks ago. It was right before the beginning of June. I think it was the end of May. Mm-hmm. And you were in a situation where you're like, you know what? I've kind of, I've come back to this location, and I'm going to be moving, or something's going to be happening in the next couple of days because my lease is up here. And I was like, whoa, and you don't really know where you're going. And you're like, not really, but I'm just going to kind of go with the flow. So tell us a little bit about, the last 3 weeks and where you've been and the feelings that have come up. And because I know that this is something that many listeners could be going through either in the past or pretty soon. So I know I've been there too. So share with us, if you're open to it, a little bit of your journey.
Yeah, so I'll give the quick version. I had spent some time in the US over the winter, and I'm Canadian, so I can't stay there for long periods of time. I was disorganized and totally lost track of the dates of when I came and then left. So I knew that I didn't have that much time to leave. And I wanted to look into the like legal ways of staying longer. So I went through the whole, customs border thing, and they suggested a better solution actually than what I had. But in order to do that, I had to leave the country and re-enter, and I hadn't left in months. So when I did that, they're like, we're not going to issue you that number, and you actually have to leave the country. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And they asked me really great questions. I didn't have answers. They gave me chance after chance after chance, and I just did not have answers. And I realized how much I did not take this seriously, and it was on me. So I said, well, how long do I have to leave? And they said 2 days.
Oh.
And I'm in San Diego, and I'm like, okay. I also have my car, so I'm like, I have to drive then. So I have 2 days to get to British Columbia, basically, which is straight north. And I left because I knew that it was my responsibility, which has actually helped me really in abundance, which I'll get to. But just to get the like story going. So I end up in British Columbia, just so everyone knows, I thought I was going to stay in California. So I had friends there. I had a network. I paid for a place there. And I left all of that. My landlord is such a great guy. Thank God we had a good relationship. He was like, I'm more just worried about your like mental state and your well-being, that you just have to leave all of a sudden, and so we figured out some of the like money stuff, and he was really kind and all this stuff. So it's just interesting who you meet on your journey too. But I called a friend of mine, and she actually decided to drive with me. God bless her soul. Seriously. I have really good friends. Like you were saying, you attract really good people into your life. So she came with me. And then I was in British Columbia, and I decided to get a place, just an Airbnb place, for a month. I don't know why I felt this pull to look for a month. So I did, not just a few days. I did. I was like, and this place was perfect. You could see the mountains, the water. It was for the day that I was getting to BC, so it was basically available in 2 days, which is kind of unheard of for a place that beautiful in British Columbia. So part of what I want to share about abundance is also following energy. So at this point, you asked me about how I was feeling. I would go between like shit scared, wanting to just sleep and like not have to deal with anything, and then also feeling like I was actually making a really responsible decision. So it didn't look pretty, but on some energetic level, like the feeling sense was, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. Now this is internally, so nobody knows that. But internally, I knew I was doing the right thing, but there would be moments where I'd be packing up my bag, and I remembered this morning just showering and thinking it was going to be a normal day. And then here I'm packing up my stuff to leave.
Yeah,
So
it's
I would
like
have
almost
these
a shift in
moments.
reality,
It is. So I would have these moments of like, what the hell am I doing? And then be like, oh, right, it's the right thing to do. What the, oh yeah, it's the right thing to do. And so it was this like kind of like start, stop motion, because I got back to my place in San Diego at 2 p.m. and at 7:30, I was on the road heading north.
That's wild.
So 5 hours was the time that I took. And I don't even think I sat down actually since I don't think I walked back from Mexico. And I don't think I actually even sat down again, other than to just drive my car. So I was constantly on the go. So it's one of those things that I've learned is like, if there's energy there, there's something there. So even though I wanted to like sit down, I wanted to like sleep and like just kind of pull the covers over my head
and
a little
ignore
bit
it, right?
and ignore it. I was also like, wait, if I care about my future, if I truly believe I'm abundant, I would do everything I can in this now moment to protect that. So what's the best decision for me? And it was leave the country, because if you seriously want to come back here, abide by their rules, and do everything to your highest degree that you can do right now. And so I've never thought like that. in a total panic situation. The border panics me anyway. Like normally it would panic me. And somehow he's telling me these things I don't want to hear. You have to leave our country. Why are you here? But like he's telling me these things. Nobody wants to hear those words. It's like the worst words you could hear. You're
Of
basically being
course.
deported, right? So it's like the word, I mean, he basically used every word other than deported, right? So literally, that's not the words you want to hear. And I was so open in that moment and I was so present that I could actually stay calm. And that's a key that I want everyone to remember is just if you stay present, you actually you don't entertain emotions from your past
Or the future, for that
or the
matter, the
future.
anxiety
Well,
of what happens
right.
tomorrow, you know?
Right. But I find that most of that is from a previous experience that I had in my past that I'm just copy and pasting to my future.
Mhm.
Right. I think future tripping is actually past tripping, but we
That's
just
a,
call it future
yeah.
tripping. Right. Because we've only felt it, our body remembers it from some previous experience because we've held on to it. So it was this moment of growth and just letting go. And all of this felt so weird. Like I remember driving home and I just felt so empty because you know what's actually funny, Tanya? I'm thinking about this now. I visualized that I'd be driving in my car coming back across the border
Mhm.
because I was like, I don't want to get stuck in Mexico, you know, because there's a chance that could happen because I'm Canadian. They have no reason to let me back in.
Of course.
So
Mhm.
like the worst case thoughts are in your head. And so I remember like visualizing like, no, I'm gonna come back. I see myself in my car. I see myself. I saw all these things, but the context was gone. So I didn't say, oh, I'm going to have the, number that they promised me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I didn't say any of that. I just said, I'm going to be driving in my car. And that's exactly what happened. I was driving in my car back, but I didn't have what I thought I wanted. So it was just, so why I'm telling everyone this is because there was a whirlwind of emotions, but I should also tell your listeners, I had just spent a week with Dr. Joe.
Yes.
And he literally just told us that as you change your energy, things around you in your world will crumble. Like he literally
Interesting.
said to us, he
Mhm.
said that to us, that if you do this right, everything that you previously believed in is creating what you currently have. If you believe that, as you change your beliefs, and for 7 days I was changing my energies, changing my beliefs, like at a very high level. I didn't think it would happen this quickly, but a part of me knew that this needed to go.
It's like a
Uh,
Band-Aid ripping off.
totally. And I was like, oh my God, I'm being initiated. And it was the reason why I was able to, not the reason why, but I think part of the reason why I was able to handle that so well is because of the Dr. Joe event, because I was primed for that moment. I was primed. So I want to tell people, if you don't know what abundance is and you're like, I don't know what that is for me, I would highly suggest you read books on it, because people who are abundant who read books are basically giving you codes. They're giving you information that you can use to prime yourself. Because as you go through the process yourself, it's going to look different for Tanya. It's going to look different for me. But I was primed. I was primed because I knew, it's so weird. And maybe this will actually help your audience even more. Even though my conscious mind was saying, he's telling you you're deported, for some reason that felt expansive.
Yeah, because you were growing in that situation. Most people would have panicked and freaked out, and which you did to a certain
I
extent, but you
did,
also
yeah.
were consciously aware of the emotions as they were coming up.
No, but even the idea of leaving the country in 2 days felt expansive. Trying to fight to stay in California didn't feel expansive. And
That's
so I
interesting.
followed, and so abundance to me always feels expansive. I practiced for 7 days with Dr. Joe, truly embodying and feeling abundance. And so the thing that felt most like that frequency was actually leaving, which is so interesting, which I want to tell people that was the hardest part, which I kind of just told you, like on that day where I kind of had that like stop start of like, what am I doing? What it was actually my mind being like, this, we don't understand this. There's no program for it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, but actually that's a good thing
You're
that there's no
creating,
program
yeah, it's like
because
you're
I'm creating
creating
a
a
new
new higher
program.
vibrational program.
Right. So I created a new program, which is so cool. But if you are not able to withstand that highly uncomfortable period of time where your brain is trying to like, it's like, so because that experience itself wasn't enough to get me freaked out, my brain was like, maybe we'll try something else to get her freaked out. Let's talk about that last time when everything went wrong. And then that's when I would stop packing and have that moment of like, and then I was like, wait a minute, no, that's going to distract me. And so I was stronger than my program, but it does take a certain degree of will and strength. And I don't think if I had 5 days instead of 2 days, I don't know if I would be here.
That's
It was
interesting
like,
because you
it was
wonder
like I
what,
had to.
yeah, you were forced to. You didn't,
I
you
was
only
forced
had
to.
48 hours to get your stuff together and get out. And sometimes I feel like when it's quicker, it's easier, because you're like,
Totally.
I don't have a choice. I just have to do what I'm feeling in my gut that I have to do rather
Right.
than overthinking it.
Totally. There wasn't room for that. The only thing that there was room for was feeling and moving. So I cried in my car. Like I remember afterwards, I pulled into my driveway and I was like, what the hell? I cried. I didn't even cry. I called my friend and she was the one who like lives in San Diego and we plan to do so much stuff. And anyway, I was like, I have to tell her. I feel like if there's one person I have to tell, it's her. And so I didn't think I was even going to cry. And then I started telling her and it started becoming real.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just this fantasy world that I just came back from. It was like, and I spent the whole day going to airports, just going through a whole rigmarole. And so I was exhausted too. And so there was all this culmination of things coming together and I just started crying. And so I had moments, and even on the actual road trip up there, I had moments of just breaking down completely,
Which is energy and movement, right?
which is
Emotion,
energy and
energy and
movement.
motion. Mm-hmm.
But to like, because we shared a room and my cat was with us, and it was like, despite like the uncertainty I was literally like going head first into, we were just vibing. We were like, we knew this might be our like last time seeing each other for a while, so we're like, let's make like the most out of it. And I want to tell you, I made such strange decisions that also felt right. Like, I'm gonna go for a car wash. I know I have 2 days, and we're pulling like 18 plus hour days, and I knew that. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go for a car wash, and that's the exact thing I needed in the moment. I needed to just recalibrate, refresh myself.
Cleanse your
And
energy.
for some reason, when the car got washed, it was like I was like, oh, that's what I needed. I just needed that. I don't know. It was so cleansing. And it's like I made questionable decisions, but in my heart they were the right move, because there was like cobwebs on my car. I'd just been parked there for so long and I was like, I'm not driving back with cobwebs on my car. And it's just all these decisions you think are nothing, right? Like, oh, why would you do that? That makes no sense. But if we're talking about abundance, right? And if you have this idea like, oh, I'm going to wash my car, it didn't take that long. Well, I mean, I think it took 5 minutes. It wasn't that huge thing that everyone would be like, what are you doing? And we felt so good. We were laughing for hours about how the car wash was the thing both of us needed.
Well, and it
It
could
was
have
sort of like a
been,
refresh.
yeah, like a grounding thing where you're like, I've got to ground myself into the reality that I'm in right now, just a little bit. And that 5 minute car wash is what did it.
Yeah. And like we just like emptied all the garbage that had accumulated in the car. Like it's just these small little things, because we basically lived in the car for a day as it's moving. And so it's just these like little decisions that you make along the way that I think either enhance your feeling of abundance or don't. And so if you want to take like a very black and white approach to it, it's like you're either moving towards it or you're moving away from it in every decision that you make and every opportunity that you have. And
Yeah.
I just felt like in these small moments that I maybe wouldn't have shared on a podcast, or sometimes I even forgot, we actually took the opportunity to think about abundance in the sense of, are we well fed? Are we nourished?
Do you have money for
How is
gas?
yeah, how is my energy? And it's like my cat was such a good feedback, because she's just like passed out and she's never that relaxed in the car ever. But both of us were so chill. We were so happy. We were so good that she just was like, she was such a great feedback. And so, I want to share with people that, something quote unquote bad can happen to you, but it's how you respond.
Mhm.
What do you make of it? Do you want to cry? Did I want to cry? Did I want to go and run away? Of course I wanted to do all those things. I'm human. I was like, how did I get myself in this situation? Like I thought I was a more like organized person, And I thought I cared about the things I said I cared about more. So it was such a like ego hit to just be like, you're this disorganized and now you're going to share it with people. But I was like, I'm human and
But
I
you were
screw up.
also in the flow state. So we question that. Is our
Mm,
sense of organization creating resistance to us being in the flow state, right? So
mm,
sometimes when we're trying to control things or we're trying to plan them out, it will hinder us being in that flow state, which is the universal language for receiving abundance. I mean, at least in
right.
my situation, it has been.
Well, I guess I should clarify because I had been in the States for months and I knew that I wanted to potentially stay, but I never looked into it seriously. And by the time I did, it was too late. Like by the time you have to file paperwork, I would have missed all of the deadlines. And so that's what I mean about um, kind of being lazy and not organized. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. It's sort of like people who say that they want abundance and then if something doesn't happen, they're like, well, see, not for me. I used to
Mhm.
be like that, but I'm like, no, did you grow and develop in that little scenario there? No, I didn't. But what if I had pursued it further? I would have grown and developed. So is it really not for you, or do you just not want it?
Yeah, no, that's interesting because energy goes where our energy flows, where our attention goes, right? So
Right.
you weren't putting the amount of attention towards staying in the States. The universe was kind of like, you're undecided, you're indecisive. Like, so we're gonna make something happen here. We're gonna sift you up a little bit, rattle you up, and then we're gonna see where you fall out.
Right. And that's what happened to me. And so that's why I want to share with people too that ultimately I do think it was for my best, but it also taught me something like, okay, if you seriously want something, I have to meet the universe halfway. I've got to do the best that I can do to make that happen. And then that's all I can feel good about, And like you said, I don't want to force and control outcomes because we've all tried that. You've tried that. I've tried that. We know it works, but you're so gosh darn tired that
Yes.
you can't even enjoy the thing. And you're like, why did I do this? And then you might lose your connection or you might forget why you even wanted it in the first place.
Very true. That's very true. So, okay, so fast forward to,
Mm-hmm.
you move through this, you're
Mm-hmm.
you're you're enjoying the journey, you and your friend are enjoying the
Mm-hmm.
journey and you get
Mm-hmm.
you get to the border and then what happens next? Like how does
Yeah.
this play out?
Yeah. So I ended up in White Rock, British Columbia, which is just over the Canadian border. So it's quite funny. I could still see the US side, which is quite funny. But anyway, I ended up getting COVID too, which is all fun. And I just feel like these were all tests. Like how are you? And it's funny because one of the things Dr. Joe said about abundance, because we talked about it at the 7-day event, right? Because he said a lot of people talk about abundance, but you can talk around abundance. You know what I mean? Like you and I were talking around abundance, but abundance is something you experience.
Mhm.
It's something you embody. So I'll talk around it, but he was saying that we all have to be initiated into abundance. And what he means by that is you only get what you feel worthy of,
Okay.
right? I think on some level, we all kind of know that that's true, but I encourage your audience to see where that falls for them. For
Mhm.
me, that felt very true. Like, wow, I can only receive what I feel worthy of. So being initiated will challenge you. You will have to step outside of your comfort zone. And as you step outside of your comfort zone, you will learn about yourself. You will have to work maybe harder than you're used to, but not in the traditional sense.
Mhm.
So the work hard is like when I wanted to freak out and like panic, the work was to not feel that way, was
Yeah.
to choose
To
how I
do the
wanted to
opposite.
feel.
Mhm.
Right. And realizing like, oh, these are just a program. When something I don't like happens, this is how I automatically respond. And realizing, oh, okay, well, I don't have to do that. That is work. I'm telling you, because it takes so much self-awareness, so much self-control, so much self-discipline, all the things I had been practicing the previous months.
It's like you had a
Look at that.
tsunami of triggers that you were just like,
Seriously,
I
literally,
have
I'm
to
like
just work through
ninja. I'm
these
like,
bad
oh,
boys.
oh, 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 oh. It's like you're like, where are my ninja moves? And you work through three, and you're like, do you think that you get a break? And here's another one. You're like, oh my god. And so, but I knew it was the initiation, and I had done like videos about this. I also had just spent 7 days with people that had laboratory tests saying that they have stage 4 cancer, but had no symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, well, you don't have to be that diagnosis. You can have it. And they're not denying any kind of like what doctors were saying. They weren't even denying that they had cancer, but they're like, I don't have to be a typical person that has cancer. I don't have to feel all those emotions. I don't
That's a
have to do
program.
that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a program. So they were like, well, I can do things differently. And so I spent time with these people who were really inspirational to me, because I was like, how would I respond if I got, stage 4 pancreatic cancer? I don't know. But sitting beside someone who had that happen to them, and they have this cheery demeanor, and they have no reason to be happy. 3 weeks ago, you just found out you had pancreatic cancer. Why is she even smiling?
Yeah.
Let alone friendly to me, let alone putting her arm around me and like, talking me through something. Like, where does that come from? So like these people were rubbing off on me. So when I got COVID, I was like, okay, the test says positive, but I don't have to feel
The
sick.
symptoms. Mm-hmm.
I don't have to feel it. So again, it was this test of mindset again,
Mind over
test
matter.
of abundance, and like, okay, do I trust my body? Yeah, I totally trust my body. And so I would never have thought that that was my next lesson, but it was. And so I saw everything as an opportunity and as a challenge. So ever since the Dr. Joe event, I'm a different person. And instead of shrinking and wanting to play small from all these things that happened to me, I completely shifted my mindset about, I'm being initiated. Oh, okay. I understand. And so it changed my frame of how I looked at what the world was presenting to me. I didn't try to control anything anymore. I
Mhm.
was like, the only thing I can control is my response.
It's almost like an obstacle course is kind of what I'm getting in my mind's eye a little bit. It's like,
Totally.
you're going through a Spartan race or, something along those lines. And then you get to a certain obstacle and you can either throw your hands up in the air and say, I'm not going to do this because I can't succeed, or you're going to, beat yourself up about it, or you're going to say, I'm going to try my darn best to try and overcome this obstacle. And it seems like you were just getting one after the other, similar to a Spartan race, or however you want to
Totally.
use that analogy,
Totally. And
so
like sometimes you have to dig in the mud under that fence, the electric fence, and it's really, you're so muddy, but you feel so proud because you're like, I did that, you
yeah.
know, like I really did that. And then sometimes you have to, climb that, rope wall or whatever it is, right? And so you're right. It's like, but all of those things make you stronger.
Hmm.
And so that's the way I really shifted and framed what I was doing differently. And something that he also has talked about before that I listened to recently, he talked about this abundance challenge. So I don't know if I have time to go into all of it, but I'll just give you a quick little snippet of basically you surround yourself with abundance. So because the internet has basically all the information and knowledge we could ever want, we have access to people like Oprah. You could literally spend a whole day with Oprah. People are like, no, I can't. I'm like, you watch her videos on repeat on YouTube. You've spent the day with her,
Yeah. Or Dr.
right?
Joe,
Or
or
Dr. Joe,
Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'll say his last name
right?
for those of you who are like, who's Dr. Joe?
Right. Dr. Joe. So I had watched every single video that he has on YouTube before the event. And so I actually met him at the event on the Saturday. And I have to tell you, like I knew it was Dr. Joe, but I had spent so much time with him
You felt
that
like
it
you knew
wasn't,
him.
I felt like I knew him, and it wasn't weird to stand beside him. He was
Yeah.
shorter than I thought, but like other than that, I was like, I've spent so much time with you that my subconscious mind isn't like shocked.
Well,
It's
and you
like
manifested him into your
totally.
physical reality. Yeah.
Totally. It was just funny because I heard his voice and I was like, well, I always hear his voice. That can't be him. And then literally he's right there, the same black t-shirt he always wears. It's just like, oh my God. It was just funny. And so you can spend time with these people and then pay attention to how they think, how they talk about money,
How they
pay
react.
attention how
Yeah.
they react. So
Mhm.
I started, but then the more you do that, the more you actually see yourself as them.
That's cool.
And
Hmm.
so it starts to do this thing in your brain because your brain doesn't know if it's real or if you just imagined it. It doesn't know. So again, my brain was like, oh yeah, you spent so much time with Dr. Joe. And then when he showed up, it was the same.
That's cool. Like a
my
hologram.
brain, like a hologram. It was so interesting to watch my brain be like, oh yeah, of course he's right there. You spend time with him. It didn't know because I'd spent hours and hours and I watched his one Lewis Howe interview like 7 times. Like hours. I want people to know. It's not just like, I didn't watch it once. I watched it for hours. I took notes. My brain literally manifested him because I had just spent so much time with him. And so what I did when I started researching abundance is I made abundance my own, because everyone's going to have what abundance resonates with them now. Like I told you, abundance 6 months ago in me, different relationship. Now we have a very different relationship. And I came across this term anti-fragile.
Uh-huh.
And it hit me straight in my heart. I was like, oh, because I think people think that there's like fragile, and the opposite of fragile is resilient.
Uh-huh.
But Nassim Talib, I think, he wrote this book called Anti-Fragile. And he said that's actually not true. The opposite of fragile isn't resilient. Because think about it, if a wine glass is fragile, if it falls, it breaks,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if a wine glass is resilient, right? If it fell, it would just stay the same. But that's not the opposite of it. The
Uh-huh.
opposite of it is anti-fragile, meaning if you dropped it, it would get stronger.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That's the
Mhm.
opposite. And so, well, how does this apply in real? Because everyone's like, I'm not a wine glass. Okay, well, I used to be a wine glass because I didn't realize I was very fragile,
Yeah.
meaning my self-esteem was based around things that were very fragile
Outside of ourselves.
outside of ourselves. So like ego things. So like how smart I was. So let's just say, because I'm a doctor, and were even like, what do I call you? I'm like, I don't know. But I'm a doctor, so my fragility or my self-esteem was based on being smart. Okay, this wasn't a conscious process, this was obviously unconscious. So if somebody smarter came in the room, or I perceived them to be smarter, my self-esteem was gone.
Uh-huh.
That's very fragile, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, and then I looked at my whole life and I was like, oh my God, my whole childhood was basically fragile, because I didn't actually want to feel my emotions. So I didn't know how I felt about anything.
And to
So
step
I
into your
was very
power.
fragile.
Yeah.
Right. And you and I have talked about codependency. So in order to overcome that fragility, I would feel other people's emotions and then be able to predict how they were going to respond. I was right like 97% of the time. And that's what my self-esteem was based around. That's a very fragile self-esteem, because if any of that goes wrong, any step of the way goes wrong, my self-esteem is gone. And
You're
so that's why
broken. Yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
broken. And that's why I had such low self-esteem. So I was like, okay, well, what is anti-fragility? Anti-fragility is anything that happens in life makes you stronger.
Mm-hmm. Like
Okay, so
building
what
blocks. Yeah.
building blocks, right?
Mhm.
But okay, so what shift do I have to make to become anti-fragile? And I thought about it, I thought about it, and then I watched a Tom Bilyeu video, because YouTube has AI that's amazing. And he was talking about this exact thing. And I'm like, whoa, did I manifest this? Apparently I did.
You
And he
aligned with it.
said,
Yeah.
literally, because I wrote down the like question, well, what shifts do I have to make to get there? And he literally said, the shift that you have to make to become anti-fragile, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, is to become a learner.
Oh. So recognizing that, in your doctor persona, you felt as if I had to know everything, or I had to be
No, no,
highly
no,
intelligent.
no, no. His thing was to become the learner. So you literally, your whole identity is based around becoming the learner. So I'm going to
Oh,
learn from this scenario. I'm going to grow from this. I'm getting better every single day.
I see where you're coming from.
So
Okay.
it's an internal thing. So now, instead of my self-esteem being centered around things outside of me, if you like me, that was one of them that came up. I'm like, oh God, if somewhat, if I feel, if I feel more important,
Uh-huh.
these were things that actually came up. I was like, wow, this was so subconscious. I didn't even know it. And I erased all of that. I said, no, that's not what we're doing anymore. So what we are going to do is we're going to base it on how we feel internally.
Mhm.
Did I learn from this? Because I can learn
What
from
can I learn
everything.
from this
What can I
too?
learn from this?
Mhm.
And did I do my best? Like my effort to overcome those negative things that were part of my old self-esteem. If
Interesting.
if I can overcome that, I'm going to have abundance, because if that was based in lack and I do the opposite of that, it's going to be better than lack. So,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you're right. It's like you're swimming to the, you're deep in the mud and you're just swimming to the top. You're like, okay,
Seriously, you're like, I'm just going to get there because it's going to
I'll
be
get
better
there
than
shortly.
that. Right. It's like, well, I'm going to be better than that. So I made these massive mindset shifts, massive. And every time I made these mindset shifts, I had to let go of a part of myself.
Uh-huh.
And so we talk about the abundance channel. We haven't really actually spoke about it yet because I rambled on about my story, which you can cut out some of it. But what I want to tell people too is something that's really interesting about the abundance channel is that I had to make space for it.
Ah, okay.
So something that I
Because you
realized
had
was
a lack channel. We were
I had a
probably on
lack
the lack
channel.
channel.
I was on the lack channel. No, for real. I was on the lack channel, especially in certain areas of my life. I was on the lack channel. And so I had to let go of the lack channel. I had to let go of the like, and it wasn't all at once. It was like piece by piece, let go of the lack channel. And then once I let go of the lack channel, it was like a veil was lifted. I think I told you the day, it was like the veil was lifted enough, and it was like, you are abundance and you have this individual channel. You have a channel. Tanya has a channel. Tanya's channel doesn't affect your channel
Uh-huh.
because everything you need for your channel is here. And I'm like, say what? What? I mean, on some intellectual level, I knew it, but when I had that feeling inside of my body, like, actually, everything you need for it is here, I was like, well, what's preventing me from experiencing this with my eyes open? Because this was in meditation.
Uh-huh.
And why, if it's true, which is the question I'm sure many people have, okay, so I'm an abundance channel, or I have an abundance channel.
Or I am a
Yeah.
channel of abundance.
Yeah. I was like, I think it corrected me after we talked, and it was like, you are an abundance channel. I was like, okay.
Mhm.
But why aren't you experiencing it? That might be the first question. Like, okay,
Why are you
Tracy,
tuned out of it?
Tanya,
Yeah.
yeah, why am I not? If what you're saying is true, if you followed with us and didn't shut it off yet, if you've been following us and you're like, okay, if this is true, why am I not experiencing it? This is the same question I had.
Mm-hmm.
If it's been true my whole life, if it's true all along, why am I not experiencing it? And the answer that I got is what we talked about earlier in terms of awareness. If you're not aware of it and you don't hold your focus and attention on abundance, it's going to be very difficult to bring that in to manifestation. And as a doctor, I can tell you we have a very strong survival gene.
Mm-hmm.
The survival gene has been reinforced for hundreds of thousands of years, if not more. That gene is so dominant and so strong that it literally, we're so programmed for lack, because
Yeah.
that's how everyone survived. If you didn't have it and you went and you got it, you survived.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yeah, and it's like, you're focusing on the abundance channel, and then you have the lack channel going over here. Hey, I'm over here, and you keep diverting your attention to lack. It's a matter of time before we're like, shut it off, lack channel.
Right.
I'm not tuning in to your frequency anymore because I am building up my abundance channel. And I think that takes time and practice to be able to do that. And like you talked about, the initiation stage of learning and catching ourselves in those thoughts of, I'm meditating and I'm focusing on abundance. And then we stop meditating and then someone calls and, or you're like, oh, I go to run groceries and my car doesn't start, or something happens and now I've got to spend $2,000 on my car. And now I'm back in the lack channel of, I don't have $2,000 to spend on my car, but no, okay, let's catch ourselves in this. You're sifting yourself. There's a lesson to be learned here. You're asking yourself, how can I learn from this situation? I was in an abundance channel this morning and now I have this car situation presented in front of me, and I can either choose to get, really sad and upset or freaked out or stressed because I have to spend $2,000 on my car, or I can tune into my abundance and I can just really, settle into that and say, okay, this is all literally panning for gold is what I kind of visualize. This is all panning out and it will pan out in the best interest for me because I'm not focused on the lack. The money is here, the money will come, everything is fine. I'm in alignment with it. And I've had those situations too. And I do think our mindset plays a huge role in that, because I've had those situations where you're like, oh, I don't have that money for that. But I'm like, nope, I'm good. Everything is fine. And then boom, something happens. They're like, oh, I have a 50% off coupon for you. And I'm like, are you serious? Just kind of crazy things like that happen. So we have a choice to tune into the lack channel or to tune into the abundance channel at every given time. And like you said, we have to sit back and say, okay, what is the lesson here? What am I meant to learn here? Am I going to continue on my old program that no longer, benefits me or serves me? Or am I going to tap into this new program that I have been being initiated for and beginning to learn,
Right.
and how am I going to embrace this? And how am I going to really almost like ingrain it into my subconscious that this is the frequency I want to be on, not that old frequency that had me in survival mode, that had me in lack programming. And it takes a little bit of kind of molding to do that a little bit, and catching yourself in those thoughts.
Yeah. And I love what you said, because it's all very true. It feels very true to me. And there's so much benefit to staying in survival on some level. So like if you stay in like a victim mindset, or if you blame other people or you complain, if you're addicted to those emotions, you're getting your fix.
Totally.
Right.
And you're attracting more of that,
and
more
you're attracting
complainers and victims. Yeah.
Totally. But if that's what you have your self-esteem and your identity centered around, why would you want to change that?
Mm-hmm.
Because it feels that's what actually, in some strange way, even again, on that surface level, that doesn't look good, like how getting deported didn't look good. Right. But on an internal level, that actually helps you feel good. So breaking out of that cycle is very challenging, right? It's very challenging. That's one level. On a second level, you get something else from it too. So that might also help you feel important. If all of your friends complain and you guys bond based on suffering, if you lose those friends, well, if you stop suffering, right? Like if you just decide like, I don't like this feeling, I don't want to feel this way anymore. When you stop doing that, you're also going to lose those friends potentially.
Totally.
So it's not that people don't want to, it's not that people don't want to do the work of not feeling suffering anymore. It's like, have you also addressed the fact that you might lose all your friends?
Yeah, because when your energy shifts, your circle shifts. Because,
your circle shifts.
Yeah,
but it's very difficult
program of suffering.
Right, but it's like there's another challenge of like the like mental adjustment that it takes. Like you might not have that circle of friends all the time. They might still be friends and talk shit about you. Like that is what I think is actually the hardest thing to deal with.
I agree.
It's all the other things, because everyone's like, I want abundance, and I believe some people want abundance, and then when you see whatever their challenges show up for them are, they'll maybe jump over the first, and then they're like, I can't do this. And they just stop. And I'm like, oh my God, like I remember that was me. Like I'm talking about abundance now, but I've lost so many friends. I've lost jobs. I've lived different places. There's so many things that have come in and out of my life. And now I can understand, now that I've shifted to anti-fragile, almost more of my past is making sense in terms of what lessons I could have learned. And it took me, I recreated it 3-4 times before I learned that lesson. And I was like, oh my God. And so I just want to tell people too, like, don't be so hard on yourself in this process, because I'm making it sound like it's really easy. And on some level it is, but there's also like a reality of, like I said, I lost my whole life crumbled in front of my eyes. The leaving San Diego was the first part, and then there were so many other things that crumbled. But because I had more knowledge and more awareness, I didn't panic. And so the whole point of me even telling you my story is that if this happens to you, you can literally be like, wait a minute, this person on this podcast, if you don't know my name, said this one time, maybe this what that is what that is. I just want you to have some kind of book in your bookshelf around, you're doing the best you can, but also be aware that you will have to face parts of yourself. I have no other way of saying it. I had to look at myself and be like, wow, I only cared about feeling important, or more like more important than other people.
Mhm.
I said I cared about them, but all I cared about was feeling more important, or all I cared about was feeling good about myself. I didn't even really truly care about the other person. It was what could they do for me. That's not abundant. And so I had to look at that part of myself, and that was hard to look at, because as a doctor you're like, I'm altruistic and I'm doing it for everybody else, but there was a part of me that was like that, and there was also this other part of me that I never gave space for, the darker side of my
Mhm.
ego, where I
That
looked at
shadow
the fact
aspect.
that
Mhm.
that shadow aspect, to really look at that and be like, wow, and just love myself anyway.
Mhm.
Just accept that part. Okay, so this is true. And that was hard. That was really hard to look at that and be like, wow, this is true about me? Shit. And then be like, okay, have a moment of like, wow, okay, where did that come from? And like, I don't want to do that anymore. It doesn't feel good. And like, I'm going to love myself.
Mhm.
I think that's the part that I wanted to touch on too. Like, I really had to look at these darker places of myself and love them.
Yeah. Shine light on them. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And just, but no one can do that for you. Like, I can't do that for you. Tanya can't do that for you. Tanya can't do that for me.
Exactly.
She can support me in that process,
Mhm.
but
Hold space for you
ultimately
in that
I have to
process.
be the one to look at that shadow aspect of myself and be like, yeah, I still love me for it. I still love me, and I'm gonna do everything I can to change. I'm not gonna do that anymore.
And I think it's important too, like you discussed, when you're in that as a doctor, I think many of us, even me working in healthcare, if
Mm-hmm.
I was always in a state of panic and freaking out all the time, then I wouldn't have been very good at the job that I was doing, because when patients were coming into the emergency department, or I was dealing with staff in the ICU, if I was losing it, I was setting the tone, and they were losing it. So I was trying my best to hold a frequency, to be a calming, aromatherapy candle, I guess, as an analogy. I was trying to
I
do
love
my
it.
best to do that. And so I think when we go through these storms in our life, being consciously aware of, we can either be whipping around like a kite in a hurricane, or we can sit and be grounded and be present in the moment and be consciously
Mm-hmm.
aware of what emotions are coming up. Is it fear? Where's that stemming from? Is that something from my childhood? Is there a related experience that I had when I was younger that is very similar to the experience that I'm having now? Is this abandonment? Is this a rejection? What are the emotions that are bubbling to the surface for me, and really just sitting in them and being present, and also surrounding yourself with that love and
Mm-hmm.
that worthiness and that abundance, everything that we are, our divine template or our divine blueprint is. And so, Tracy, let's fast forward a little bit to where you are
Mm-hmm.
today. So we've gone
Yeah.
through all of your story, most
Mm-hmm.
of it anyway, and
Mm-hmm.
let's look at, all of these lessons that you've gone through. You have had a significant amount of abundance come into your life, and let's share that with the listeners, so that way they can kind of see, where your story started and where you are today.
Yeah. So just to pick up where you left off, I had to move out of my place June 6th. That was the like last day I was going to stay at my place. And it was June 3rd. And I'll never forget this text from my mom. It's June 3rd. That's 3 days away from June 6th, dot, dot, dot.
You're like,
Literally,
thanks,
that's all
Mom.
the text said. I was like, yeah, okay. And so I just mean like you're going to have challenges from the outside too. Like your family might not understand what you're doing either. So that's a whole other thing. But so it's June 3rd, and I have no idea what's going to happen. But and this is what I mean, follow the nudges, because I just reached out to someone, because I was like, okay, if I believe in abundance, then I know I have people that I know here. There was like two people that I knew, and I reached out to them like, do you want to meet up? Long story short, we end up meeting up. Then she's like, hey, we should bring someone else. There's a third person here. Let's all go for dinner. They literally come to White Rock for dinner, which is hilarious. I find out about this place. She's telling me about this little town near Vancouver. And my body started getting excited and giddy like a little kid.
Uh-huh.
My body started being like, oh my God, tell me more. Banyan books. I need to go there. Like, and it was weird because it was that expansive feeling again.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't stop thinking about it. My brain was like, what? So again, this is when now things are ready to roll. So I'm meditating, and I keep feeling like there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity. So my, again, mindset shifting, and all of a sudden I start thinking opportunity. And I was like, okay, why haven't I felt it before? Why haven't I? Oh, because you weren't ready to make that move. You didn't trust yourself enough. Okay.
Ah.
So
Mhm.
I'm going to be working on trusting and opportunity. Trusting. So I do everything I say I'm going to do. If Tanya asks me to be on a podcast, I'm going to show up. I'm going to do everything that I say I'm going to do from now until whenever. And I'm also going to just focus on opportunity and trust myself that I'll move when it comes. So I knew I would have to move quickly because that was the download I was getting. It's going
Okay.
to come fast. I'm like, okay,
Be ready to take action. Mhm.
yeah. So I didn't know how it was going to be though. I didn't know anything about the opportunity. I just knew it was an opportunity and I would know it. So that's all I asked for. I'm like, you have to make it obvious. That's it. So anyway,
Just
I
smack
get
me in
this
the head. That's
feeling.
what I would just make it
Yeah,
so obvious I
I
can't turn
I
away.
always tell people and add safety if you're gonna go for a
Or comfort and grace.
mystical yeah, if you want a divine mystical experience, add safety. If you want like abundance, make it very obvious. You know, I always add those things. So anyway, she's telling me about this place, and I after dinner, my body had this energy. I didn't know what to do with it. So I was like, what do I do? It was like, go look online for, and a condo. Okay. Look online. This is on Tuesday. On Thursday, I have 4 showings and 3 of them get canceled. But I decided I'm going to go anyway and just explore this neighborhood. Like, why did I feel so excited about it? And I'm going to go to this bookstore she talked about. So I wasn't attached. I was like, I'm just going to go and I want
Pretend like you
to
live there. I do that all the time.
totally.
Pretend like
But
you
I
live there.
also, but I also very, like, I felt like I needed to go to this bookstore. So I have no idea why, but I was just like, I'm going to go. And so the guy showing me the place, and here's where it gets interesting. I could have tried to act normal, but I was just my weird self. I was asking all kinds of weird questions, and then I decided to sit on the floor. I was like, I'm sitting in this unit. I actually asked him to leave, and he's like, I can't leave you in here. I'm like, right. He's like, I can go as far away from you as possible. I'm like, okay. I just wanted my energy and his energy to be separate. So I sat on the floor. I said, is this place for my highest and best good? And the answer was no. I'm like, can I expand here? Because I told you my thing is about
Yeah.
expansion.
Learning and
Like,
expansion.
I was like, can I expand here? And the answer was no. I'm like, oh, so this is not the place for me. It was like, nope.
Interesting.
Okay. So I was a little sad and I was like, but like I was supposed to be here for a reason. I don't know why. So I just continued to open when I normally would have closed. So my heart would have been closed and shut off, but I stayed open.
Uh-huh.
And as we're walking down the like stairs, he's like, oh, by the way, we were on the 4th floor. He's like, by the way, 102 is becoming available July 1st. And I'm like, okay. I was like, is that one right here? And he's like, yeah, it's right there. It's 102. It's on the 1st floor. And I walk over to 102, and that same voice that said, not for you, said, this is the one. And I'm like, but it's on the ground floor. I don't live on the ground floor. No. So I left. And I'm walking towards Banyan Books, and it's a 30-minute walk. Long story short, I could not get this voice out of my head being like, what are you doing? You said you would move on the opportunity. And I'm like, crap. So I like text him and I'm like, can I see that this unit? What's going on with it? He's like, I haven't even listed it yet.
Oh.
I said, okay, well, I'm going to go back and see it. And so anyway, long story short, we end up arranging a visit. And as soon as I see the place, I don't even have to sit down. It's like, welcome home.
Like you just felt it.
I
Mhm.
felt it, but the voice was like, welcome home. This is your place. And I'm like, what the hell? And so he asked me, it's so funny, like so many people wanted, so I didn't know anything about the neighborhood that I'm was considering moving into, but apparently it's a very hot neighborhood. Everybody wants to rent there. This is a 2-bedroom place, which is perfect for me. I wanted an office. The ground floor is actually good for me because I need grounding.
Yeah, true.
And because it's the ground floor, there's a little bit of a backyard for my cat.
Oh,
And
nice.
I'm also not even 2 blocks from Kitts Beach, which is actually all the things that I asked for about living in California.
That's funny.
All the things that I wrote down about living in California were actually in this unit. And I was like, oh shit. But I never considered a 1st floor apartment. That's why I've been like trying to
For
find houses in
blocking it.
California
Yeah.
because I blocked it because I was like, oh my God, poor people live on the 1st floor. Oh shit. Like this is what I mean about my shadow and like random ego stuff. So I'm like, he's like asking me like, why are you the ideal candidate? And he's asking us in front of other people who want to see the place. It was the most weird experience. And everyone's answer was, I'm responsible, I'm clean, you can check up on the place whenever you want. My answer was, I believe that where we live is a very sacred space, and I plan on raising the frequency of this place.
And there's your
Not
answer.
just
That's why you're there.
not just for my benefit, but for your benefit long term. And he was like, I have never heard that before in my whole life. And it's so funny. So I
You're
ended
a
up getting
grid
the place.
worker. Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up getting, that was the most honest answer because I had studied Marie Kondo and she talked about how your house has a frequency
Yes.
and you can love your house and your house loves you and there's a symbiotic relationship. Anyway, so I had been practicing that every Airbnb I stayed at, I would thank it
Uh-huh.
and then we'd communicate and I would say hello when I got there and I would say my and why I chose it and all these things. So I started to develop this relationship with spaces. So when that space like chose me, I was like, well, shit, I have to honor this feeling. And then he told me, he's like, people offered me more money for this place. People offered me like 6 months up front. People offered me more than I was asking for to rent this place. And guess what? All I could think about was renting it to you.
That's awesome. And it's almost like that Maharishi effect, that 1% of the population that can shift the energy. And I was just watching a show the other day on Gaia channel that talked about that, how one person just meditating, say an apartment because I live in an apartment complex too. And I've noticed this, I will shift, I listen to frequencies and tones all day. I meditate. My neighbors are just, I noticed all of them moved out within a month and then a whole bunch new moved back in and we're all like on the same frequency. It's hilarious. So
It's actually so funny.
it's so funny. And I'm actually speaking on Friday about grid work and how us as certain light workers are being guided to certain areas. And there was probably a reason why you had to go to San Diego to get certain codes or activations. And then now you drove across an area to get certain, kind of, it's almost like a glitter trail, it's like you got your little glitter trail.
A glitter trail. But if you told me on June 3rd, you're going to sign a 12-month lease to stay in Canada, I'd been like,
you're
no.
crazy.
On a ground floor, get out of here. No. But again, on an energetic level, I knew what the opportunity felt like. I didn't know what it looked like. And I had to practice non-judgment, right? So all the things I had been talking about, I had to actually embody. But once I got past all of that, I was like, this is exactly what I asked for in California. This is better than what I asked for in California. And to pay it in Canadian dollars, being Canadian, it's actually
It's so much
significantly cheaper. But I also know that neighborhood is so for me. Everyone's like, you and kids, of course you and Kitsilano. Why didn't anybody tell me that? I don't know. But everyone's like, you're like, I already met 3 people there who are like, you got to meet these people, you got to meet that people. So it's like, I just stepped into this doorway of abundance. Like, there's no way, Tanya, I should have gotten that unit. None. No, because when he posted it, there was like, 12 people seeing it a day.
It was like divine intervention,
Divine intervention. I'm telling you, doors will open.
Yeah.
And guess what? I couldn't do this alone. It's like that Drake song. I'm not doing this alone. I'm not.
That inner guidance.
I had the universe open doors for me. I couldn't, and I channeled that. You think I was planning on saying like, oh, well, I'm going to add energy? No, I didn't plan that. I was like, what do I have to say here? I literally got out of the way. I was like, what has to come out of my mouth? If this is going to work and this is for my highest good, what do I have to say? And then the words are coming out of my mouth and I'm like, what? And that's what left that impression on him that I couldn't do that. Like, I could not do that. And I told him, if this is for me, it's gonna find, like, we're gonna find a way. And then there was issues with like finances and there's issues with that. And all these things came up. And so I had to, again, what can I learn? How does this move forward? How does this move? And I almost screwed things up, because my ego came back and was like, hello. And so
hi, I'm here.
Yeah. And
the
so
lack channel. Hi, I'm here.
Right. And as soon as the lack channel came out, I felt it. And I was like, no, not, we're at the finish line. No, you're not. And I caught myself and I was like, I have to let the ego die. And in that moment, I made a decision and I could feel my ego dying. And so I just want people to know all of these challenges were to grow me, because I got so entranced with the growth that was happening in me. I was like, I don't care if I get this place or not. I don't really care. I love the fact that I'm growing so much. I really was like, wow, I'm growing. I love who I am right now. And then I stepped into that place and I loved everything about it. I was like, I just love this space. I love it. And that's how I knew it was a match, because I'm like, I love it this much. There has to even the weird things about it, I loved. I was like, this is so strange that I just love this place and I'm so excited to be there. And so that happened. And then, money came to me randomly.
Mhm.
It was like, oh, your, tax refund's going to be $500. Like, that's cool. A text 2 days later, it's actually $5,000. Like, that's
See?
10. Wait, what? That's not what you told me before. It's like, actually, we did this and that, and it's 5,000. Oh, by the way, we actually found you an extra 300, 400.
It's awesome.
So wait. So it went from 500 to 5,000. Now you've added 700. She's like, yep. Where did that come from? She's like, I don't know. We just were digging around. We were like, oh, actually, we can apply that. It comes to you from you don't even know where.
Yeah. And
right?
don't question where it's going to come from. And don't even set those standards. Just say, I trust that it's coming in. I trust that
Yes.
it's here, that I'm in alignment with it.
Right. And so it's just
Yeah.
feedback that you're vibrating at that frequency. And then I worked with a private client yesterday. I just came back from that event, which was like, I didn't expect to, work. I was like, I'm going to come back to pack up my stuff. And now I'm picking up work. And again, it's like, open yourself to what's possible. But I have to give up the I'm tired. I don't have time. I don't know how. I have to throw all those away and step into my greatness, really. And that's what I love about all of this. It's like, oh my God, I'm learning about myself. I'm becoming a different person. I'm looking at things differently. And then my life is now, even though it was June 3rd is the day I'll never forget.
Yeah. That wasn't too far ago, too long
No,
ago.
no, it's June 15th.
I know.
June 3rd.
And all of these things have transpired for
and
you.
all of these things have transpired since then.
And you didn't have a clue on June 3rd what was even going to happen. And I think that's why I wanted to bring you on the show today, was to share your story, and I can dive into my story at some point, probably not in this podcast because we've gone a little bit,
Yes.
over an hour, but I do feel that when we trust and we listen to our intuition and we speak from our heart, we are always in alignment with abundance. Always. It's just consciously recognizing when we're not doing, those things.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. Cause I think it's true. If you go really deep into your heart, the only thing that is there is abundance. Mm-hmm. So if you just, even if you don't believe that, just trust that voice and see for yourself. Like I always tell people, like, have your own result. Mm-hmm. Like, use my result to help you when you're new at it, but help you create your own result.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Like, not help you just feel good temporarily. Like, I used to be okay with that, like using my story to help people feel good temporarily. Don't do that, because our brains love to be entertained. They love it. And you could use my story as like entertainment and be like, that's cool. Or you could be like, I'm going to create my own result, just like she did. Mm-hmm. And like, I hope I inspire you to create your own result, because once you have your own result, that'll be your energy to keep creating from that.
I love that. I love that. And I feel that many of us are being guided to move across the planet all over the place right now. I've got 2 friends who said, Tanya, I've got my whole house packed up and I don't know where I'm going. I just know I'm going somewhere. And that reminds me of my story
of you
4 years ago, and you as well. Like on June 3rd, you're like, okay, I know I've got to be out of here, but I have no idea where I'm going. And so if there's any advice that we can share, it's just listen to your heart, follow the nudges and go with the flow, and kind of set that lack channel to the side as much as you can, because it's gonna creep up. It will. Mm-hmm. And it did with me. I mean, I'm driving across the country and I'm in South Dakota and I don't even really know where I'm going. I'm like, what is happening? And I'm freaking out. I'm like, I'm alone. I'm a single gal. I can't be moving across the country. I mean, this is craziness, but it has all been so expansive, and I've learned so much in that process. And like you, I've been able to inspire other people through my story, because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you did that all by yourself? Like, that's craziness. And I'm like, I did, but everything fell into place for me. I'm not saying there weren't challenges in it, but the challenges, I took them and I was like, okay, how can I ride this wave versus, being thrashed around by the riptide, through this particular situation. So if you are listening to this podcast now and you're one of the ones who are packed up your home, or you've got to be out and you don't know where to go, just sit in that energy and listen to your higher guidance system. You will end up where you are meant to end up. And there's a reason, Tracy, that you ended up in British Columbia or back in Canada than you did down in San Diego. There's a reason, but there was also a reason you were in San Diego for that amount of time too. So, I do feel like we're all being divinely guided. We just have to tune in to it. And once we do, we will tune into that abundance channel, because I've been doing the same. You and I joke, I talk about Sasquatch all the time. And it's a funny topic for me. And I joke that Sasquatch was a part of my awakening process. But with that said, I finally came out with my story the other night on someone else's podcast, and the amount of feedback, positive feedback that I've gotten from people is overwhelming. I've had all these people reaching out. Will you come on to my podcast? Will you share your story here? Will you speak light language here? I'm like, oh, I had no idea. And I finally just had the courage to just put it out there. And now it's been, whoa, this past week, I have been on a totally different timeline. And I'm like, this is some wild craziness. And funny thing is, it all started with Sasquatch,
Sasquatch.
So, I joke about all of that, but the thing is, it's like when I spoke authentically from my heart, and I shared the story that I went through. And honestly, I didn't care if people believe me or not. It was like, this is my story and I'm sticking to it. And this is where I'm at. So, but it's just really funny how it's opened up all of these different doors for me. And I thought I was going to get all of this ridicule and judgment, when actually I was embraced by all of this. And I'm like, wow. So I think when you open yourself up to the weirdness, where you think, oh, I'm being weird, or this is the unknown, is actually where we grow and we expand. And the universe is like, here, let me hand you this, and let me hand you this. And so that's been interesting, for me, because I think some of the things we're fearful of sharing, it's important for us to put ourselves out there and say, okay, I'm going to just do this. And then you're like, wow, there's actually other people out there who resonated with this, with my story. And there's going to be people out there who resonate with this story today, Tracy. So, there's going to be people. So if people want to reach out to you, share a little bit about your podcast, and, how can people reach out to you if they want more information?
Yeah. So if you want more information about how to connect to your abundance channel, or just kind of guidance, I mean, you can call me a transformation coach. That's what I really love. I love change. I love transformation. You can reach out to me at drtracydebi.com. So that's Dr. TracyDebi.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Tracy Debi. I like to post things that I hope are of value to you, and really just share with you. So I'm still going through it. Like I said, that's June 3rd, it's June 15th. I'm still going through this new up-leveling process. So if you want to follow along on what happens next, please follow me on Instagram there. And I just want to also add too, like, really quickly, just what you said, just follow the open door. Just there's a door that will open for you. And sometimes just surrender to the door and follow the open door. And that's sometimes the way into flow is just through the open door, even though you're like,
that's a weird door.
that's a Sasquatch door. Like,
Sasquatch door, but I'm going in.
Right. Follow the door and just see what happens. And I think we've both done that in very different ways. And we've experienced abundance in the areas of our life that maybe needed that to come into more of a balance. So it's just been fun.
It has. And so what is the name of your podcast? You have an excellent podcast too. So share that.
My podcast. Thank you. My podcast. I'm doing a great job advertising, aren't I?
Hey, that's okay.
My podcast is called Spirit of Success, and I do episodes almost daily. Monday through Thursday we have episodes. I have done a really good job of doing like an audio diary of the process. So if you want to figure out more, find out more about what my process was, I've shared in depth really the lessons that I've learned in the past 2 weeks. So definitely check out my last eight episodes if you want to hear more about that.
Well, thank you, Tracy. I appreciate you for spending the time with us today. And
thank you. I appreciate you so much.
I am so proud of you for all that you have gone through. And, and I think it's just exciting to watch others expand and grow. It just really inspires me to follow my divine path as well, and to have the courage and the trust and the faith to be able to do so, and to follow, that open door, move into those open
Yes.
doors. So thank you so much for all of you listening today, and, continue to shine on.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.